All events and details of this investigation has been classified as top secret and have been redacted.
Case number 78CM27, code named Colt Knight. On April 12, 2016, a 35-year-old man named Colt Knight was driving his truck, pulling a travel trailer through a small rural Midwestern town. He traveled light. His only companion was a small black cat he named Girl. Colt kept his cat in her cage in the passenger seat as he drove. He mostly listened to podcasts while he traveled long distances throughout America. Today was no different. Driving to some random location, listening to a podcast. One of his favorite podcasters that often talked about UFOs or UAP sightings, supernatural happenings, basically anything unusual. The podcast host was saying that more and more of these Dogman reports have been coming out throughout the country. The podcaster's guest was skeptical. You're talking about werewolves. So the podcaster says to his guests, there have been a lot of reports of these bipedal, huge, muscular dogmen or werewolves. I know you're a person that investigates the strange and mysterious throughout the country and even the world, so my question to you is, have you ever come across any credible stories, eyewitnesses, anything at all? The guest took a deep breath as he said, I suppose the next thing you'll ask me about is witches. The podcaster then said, come on, indulge me. The guest finally agrees and tells a story. The guest finally agrees and tells a story he came across some years ago, saying, I heard of one credible story from a sheriff. This small town sheriff is driving along a long stretch of country road at night. As he's driving, his headlights reveal what he thought was a bear. So he slams on his brakes and starts to observe this massive animal eating a deer in the middle of the road. As he's watching in his police cruiser from maybe, 30 yards away, it dawns on him. There are no bears in this area. So now he's thinking to himself, what am I looking at? Then this animal stopped feeding and stood up on its hind legs. And this thing was huge. He said this creature was at least 7.5 feet tall. And a chill went down his spine in the realization that this thing had the head of a canine. Then Colt heard a loud pop, the sound of one of his tires bursting. Colt's truck swerved from left to right as his 25-foot trailer began to sway harder as it fell out of sync with his truck. Colt was fighting with the steering wheel to control his truck, but now the truck was rocking from the wheels on the left to the wheels on the right side of the truck. He knows that he is about to wreck and is powerless to do anything about it. Colt hits the brakes, causing the truck and the trailer to jackknife. Colt felt the impact of the truck hitting the concrete run through his body as the driver's side door smashed into the ground. Unharmed, Colt's first instinct was to check on his pet cat. That was not hurt at all and still safe inside her cage. Colt grabs the pet cage and climbs out of the passenger side door, then jumps to the ground looking at the wrecked truck and trailer. He then holds the cat's cage up looking at her saying, I don't know what we're going to do, but as long as you're okay, girl, I'm okay. About an hour later, Colt stood next to the road watching his truck and camper being towed away. Then he began to walk in the opposite direction towards a diner that the tow truck driver had told him was about 7-8 miles up the road. After walking in the hot sun carrying his cat in a cage, Colt finally reached the diner. He sat in a booth next to a window drinking a coffee and staring far off into the distance, with the cat's cage set up on the table, unsure of what he would do next. Then, this beautiful woman and her 8-year-old daughter walk into the diner. Colt was completely oblivious of the woman's presence as he sat motionless, looking out the window. The little girl noticed the cat inside the cage and asked her mother if she could see the cat. She told her daughter that she'll ask the man if it's okay. She approached Colt with her daughter standing at her side and said, "My daughter really would like to see your cat." Hearing the woman's voice broke him right out of his trance. Looking at her, he said, "Sure," and he smiled. Then he opened the cage and handed the cat to the little girl. Colt tells them that the cat's name is Girl. The child smiles and hugs the cat, saying, "Hi, girl." Candice, never seen Colt before, asked him, "So, who are you? I've never seen you here before. Are you just passing through?" Colt told her he was just passing through, but got a nail in his tire and they wrecked. The woman was very empathetic to his situation and asked him where he was traveling to and where he was from. As her and her daughter both sat down at the booth, Colt tells her he's from a small town in Virginia, but not as small as this one, and that he was just traveling the country. Colt and the woman locked eyes, and Colt told her she was very beautiful. She smiled and said, "Thank you, mister." He told her his name was Colt. She told him her name was Candice, and her daughter's name is Debbie. They talked for a while, getting to know each other, and then Candice asked Colt about the condition of his camper, if it was still livable. He told her it needs some cleaning up on the inside, but it's still definitely livable. Candice then makes Colt an offer, saying, "I have a little more than 20 acres of land, and I'm willing to let you put your camper on my property if you're willing to help me harvest my land. Now, I can't afford to pay you anything, but I can keep you fed and cleaned up." Colt agrees, and they all leave the diner together. So the very next day at Candice farm, around 9 p.m. at night, a pickup truck comes speeding down the long dirt road leading up to Candice's house. Hitting the brakes hard, it created a cloud of dust, and the man inside the truck quickly opens the door and slams the truck door behind himself. He is obviously intoxicated as he walks towards the house and begins to bang on the front door, yelling out Candice's name. Candice answers the door and invites the man in. She can tell the man is drunk, and he's very upset. This man is Candice's ex. He also is her daughter's father, whose name is Paul. So Candice asks him, "What are you doing here?" And Paul aggressively asks, "Where's my daughter? Who is this stranger that you're letting stay here?" Candice remained calm, telling Paul that Colt was staying more than 100 yards in his camper on her property in exchange for him helping her on the farm. Paul wasn't satisfied with her answer, so he becomes even more angry, saying that she doesn't know him. He could be a serial killer, a rapist, or just some crazy person. But Candice is unmoved by what Paul is saying. Mr. Colt is a very nice man, and Debbie really likes him, is what she tells him. Paul calms himself before he offers to help her with the farm, suggesting that they give their relationship another chance. But Candice is not interested in any reconciliation, pointing out to him how they already tried to make things work multiple times and it just does not work. She also let him know that she can tell that he's pretty drunk, and his drinking was always a big part of why their relationship kept failing. Paul felt powerless, and that feeling of powerlessness filled him with rage, so he began yelling loudly. "So I come second to some stranger? I don't have any say in who comes around my daughter?" Candice was now very nervous and tried to calm Paul down by telling him that there's nothing romantic happening between us. It's just an agreement that helps us both out. Paul's breathing started to increase as he walks towards Candice, backing her up into a wall, yelling at her, saying, "This is my family and I won't let some..." Then a knock at the door stopped Paul mid-sentence. Paul rushed to open the door quickly, seeing Colt standing there holding a laundry basket of clothes. Giving Colt a dirty look, Paul asked if he was Colt. He said yes. Candice stands near the door speaking to Colt, saying, "This is Paul, my ex, Mr. Colt." Paul points to Colt's trailer and tells him he needs to head back to it right now. Candice speaks up for Colt, saying, "I told Mr. Colt that he could use the laundry and the washroom since he only has electricity because his water line burst when he wrecked his trailer up the road." Paul puts his index finger in Colt's chest, telling him he needs to head back to his camper right now. Colt looks at Candice and saw the fear in her eyes, and that she didn't want to be left alone with her ex. So he slowly grabbed Paul's wrist and moved his hand away from his chest. Paul became enraged and loaded up with a punch and throws it at Colt, but Colt just calmly moves out of the way, letting Paul stumble, then fall face first onto the ground. Colt asks Candice if she wants him to stay here or what, and she shakes her head no. Colt then looks back at Paul as he got back up on his feet and said, "You obviously care a lot about your daughter, so come back when you're sober. All right? Night, Paul." Colt steps into the house, then shuts the door.
All events and details of this investigation has been classified as top secret and have been redacted.
This is the continuation of the case of Colt Knight, Part 2. Early that next morning, after that little incident involving Candice, Paul, and Colt, a man named Hayfield drove down the same road that Colt wrecked his truck and camper on. As he was driving, he noticed some debris on the side of the road, so he pulled his van over so he could look through the debris. He finds pieces of a truck and a camper, so he thinks to himself, "I remember passing a small diner in the opposite direction a ways back." So he got back into his van and drove towards the diner. After he arrived at the diner, Hayfield sat at a booth and ordered some food. He was being flirtatious with the waitress as he ate. The diner wasn't busy, so the waitress just hung out and talked with Hayfield. After finishing his meal, he handed her a $20 bill and complimented the food and the small town hospitality. Then he says to her, "I know this is a shot in the dark, but I drove over 300 miles looking for my friend so I could help him out after getting into a wreck up the road a ways. But now he's not answering his phone. I don't know if it's bad reception or what." He takes out a picture of Colt, handing it to the waitress, and she remembers seeing Colt and told Hayfield that he left with a local girl that eats there every now and again with her daughter. And she does remember seeing the three of them leave together. So Hayfield walks outside the diner and makes a call. The person he calls was a man named Mr. Wainsworth. He tells Mr. Wainsworth that he knows Colt is staying somewhere nearby in this small town and he'll track him down on the next full moon. A day later, Colt receives his insurance check in the mail, and Candice drops him off at a local used car dealership to pick up his new truck. Later that afternoon, Candice opens her front door, very surprised to see Colt standing there holding a dollhouse. After seeing the dollhouse, Debbie's face lit up with joy, saying, "Is that for me?" Colt tells her, "It certainly is, sweetheart." Debbie hugs Colt, thanking him. Candice is in disbelief of his kindness to her daughter, telling him, "I drop you off to pick up your new truck and you come back bearing gifts. Mr. Colt, you are too much." Debbie excitedly tells Colt to follow her upstairs so she can show him where she wants him to put the dollhouse, and she takes off running up the stairs to her bedroom. As he begins to go up the stairs, Candice said, "That dollhouse is awful fancy. How much did it cost?" Colt reassures Candice that it was no big deal and that it doesn't matter how much it cost because it made her happy. Also, he noticed Debbie had a lot of dolls and nowhere for them to live, so he bought it for her. Debbie excitedly said from the top of the stairs, "Come on, Mr. Colt, I have the perfect place for it." Candice then tells Colt, "You go on and set that up for her. I'll make sure to thank you properly later on." After Debbie lets Colt know where she wants the dollhouse, he moves some things around and sets it up for her. As Colt goes to leave her room, Debbie asks him, if he would like to play dollhouse with her, and he agrees. Candice watched from the doorway as her daughter and Colt played dollhouse and whispered to herself, Mr. Colt. About an hour later, Debbie is tired and gets in her bed to take a nap. As Colt walks towards the door to leave the room, Debbie says, Thank you, Mr. Colt, and quickly falls asleep. Walking into the hallway, Colt sees Candice standing up against the opposite wall staring at him. As he tells her Debbie is asleep, she lunges forward, wrapping her arms around his neck, kissing him. He picks her up and then carries her into the bedroom. This would be the first time that they were intimate. 2 days later, Hayfield and 3 other men wearing black tactical clothing, all holding military-grade rifles, stood on the edge of a forest. The men stood in a circle as Hayfield spoke, telling them, It's a full moon, so most likely he'll be somewhere in these woods hunting for deer. One of the men named Newman said, I can't believe you have us out here tracking the boogeyman. Hayfield responds seriously saying, No, he's a werewolf. Another mercenary named Carey smiles as he said, Well, yeah, that makes sense. All the men laughed except for Hayfield. Newman, shaking his head, said, We're here to track a werewolf because Hayfield's eccentric billionaire boss wants one as a pet. This is ridiculous. Carey was concerned with getting paid and asked, What happens when they come up empty-handed? Are they still getting paid? Harris, the third man of the mercenaries, was confident in Hayfield and said, If Hayfield called us, then there is something to this. And we definitely are getting paid, right? Hayfield replied, Of course. Carey asked, So what happens if I get bit? Human then said, You'll be taking flea baths. Just then, a loud howl could be heard far off into the distance. All of the men looked at each other as the mood turned serious. Hayfield asked them, Now, how many wolves do you think are in this part of the country? He then tells Harris to go get the drones out of his van, which Harris did. Hayfield then holds a drone controller as the drones take flight and the men begin to walk into the woods. As they enter the woods, Hayfield reminds them to have their communications on and no live ammunition, tranquilizers only, because if he's dead, pay is cut in half. After walking more than a mile into the woods, Hayfield sees something large and bipedal on the drone controller screen, chasing a deer. He immediately tells everyone what he sees, and it's about half a click northwest from them. Hayfield looks at the drone camera feed with Harris. They watch this massive creature running around trees, gaining on the deer and leaping towards the deer, but the deer makes a sudden hard turn, avoiding the beast. The creature jumps into the trees, continuing to follow the deer, jumping from tree to tree. Then the deer finds a quiet opening in the woods and stops, looking around to see if it's still being pursued. Without making a sound, the werewolf leaped over 30 feet from the tree line, landing on top of the deer, biting into its neck. The deer goes limp as the werewolf stands up with the dead animal hanging from its mouth. Hayfield tells Harris to put the controller up and get his weapon ready, then tells all his men to move quickly before that thing runs off. They reach the opening in the forest where the werewolf was still feeding on the deer. They all quietly spread out along the tree line. Hayfield tells Carey he's their best shot, so take him down. Carey readies his shot, holds his breath, then pulls the trigger. The tranquilizer dart hits the wolf in his back. The werewolf whips around quickly, looking directly into Carey's eyes, showing his fangs. The beast rushed towards Carey, so fast he was only able to get off one more shot. But the werewolf was unfazed by the tranq darts and bit down on Carey's shoulder and neck, viciously shaking him side to side like a rag doll. As the other men stepped out from the tree line into the moonlight, rapidly firing their weapons, the werewolf was now covered with tranquilizer darts, but they seemed to have no effect on it. The werewolf released Carey from his jaws, slinging his body off into a nearby tree. As the beast ran off, vanishing into the darkness of the woods, Hayfield sprinted over to Carrie to apply pressure on his wound, yelling out, "Somebody come help me get Carrie up." Hayfield and Harris hold Carrie up on his feet as they enter a hospital ER lobby. Hayfield is screaming for a medic. A lady sitting at a desk points to a nearby room and tells them to put him in the bed. She quickly picks up the phone and says that she has a patient that just came in who is in critical condition. Hayfield steps outside of the hospital as the doctors look over Carrie. Harris tells them that some huge wolf bit him on the neck. The doctor pulled open Carrie's bloody hospital gown, revealing that Carrie was now completely healed. While outside of the hospital, Hayfield called Mr. Wainsworth repeatedly before he answered and told him the whole situation, that one of his men had been bitten and that he was in the hospital and was now barely alive. But Mr. Wainsworth was not worried at all about this news. He was just glad to hear that they were homing in on Colt. Mr. Wainsworth told Hayfield to quickly get his man out of that hospital before he heals and brings any unwanted attention to himself or them. Carrie wakes up in a hotel bed with Hayfield aiming his gun at him. Carrie was confused and asked what was going on. He told Carrie bluntly, "You got bitten, so I'm making sure you don't attack me." Carrie notices that his bite mark is completely healed, so he tells Hayfield that he's okay and actually feels really good. Hayfield puts the gun down as he tells Carrie the current situation, saying, "Our employer of this little excursion said that you would heal, and you healed. He also said that you are now infected, so now you're a werewolf." Carrie said in disbelief, "I'm a werewolf?" Hayfield continued to explain, "Yeah, but you can't spread it because you're not pure-blooded, so don't worry, our employer is not interested in having you as his pet." Carrie replies, "Well, I guess that's the good news. So, what now?" Hayfield then said, "You learn how to change into a werewolf. Track his scent, we capture him, get paid, and go home." Back at Candice farm, her and Colt are inside the barn stacking hay. Candice got turned on by Colt's brute strength, the way he handled the large bundles of hay, and seductively locked eyes with him before walking up on him from behind and wrapping her arms around his waist. Just as they started to kiss, there was a loud knocking on the barn wall. Looking towards the knocking sound, they see Agents Norman and Shaw standing at the barn entrance. Candice quickly spoke, asking, "Who are you?" Agent Shaw apologizes for the interruption and introduces himself and Agent Norman as FBI agents, and that they needed to speak with Mr. Knight. Defensively, Candice asked about what. Agent Shaw promised her that they wouldn't take much of their time, but Candice was still not liking this situation and told them if they do not have a warrant, they need to leave immediately because she didn't give them permission to be on her private property. Colt places a hand on her shoulder, giving her a quick kiss and assuring her he'd be right back. Candice crossed her arms, watching Colt as he walked outside of the barn with the two agents. The three men walked about 100 yards from the barn near the agent's car. Agent Shaw begins by complimenting Candice's beauty to Colt and that he's a lucky man. Then he tells Colt that he and Agent Norman got this crazy report of a man being hospitalized after being bitten by a huge dog man, and that the gentleman that was attacked had a huge bite mark on his neck. Colt looked annoyed and said, "You came out here to ask me about some folklore of werewolves and fairies?" Agent Shaw replied, "Oh, no, not fairies. They are not the little sweet creatures depicted in stories. Vicious, nasty little things that lured children into the woods and kidnapped them. Colt, tired of beating around the bush, asked them directly, "So, who are you really? I doubt the FBI will be looking for werewolves." Agent Shaw smiled as he said, "I guess the jig is up, Agent Norman. He's figured us out. No, we are not with the FBI. We, Mr. Knight, are with the undocumented branch of the government, and everything we do is classified as top secret and is redacted." Colt then asks, "So, you're the men in..." Agent Shaw cuts him off saying, "Not at all, Mr. Knight. I'm not looking for the one-armed man, and Agent Norman doesn't have a rich uncle that lives in Bel Air, California. You get what I'm pitching to you, Mr. Knight?" Colt nodded his head yes. Agent Shaw continued, "Now that you know who we are not, Mr. Knight, I'm only going to ask you this one time, and one time only. So please, tell us what happened on that night you bit that man in the woods." Colt tells them everything that happened that night in detail, emphasizing that he was just hunting deer, and he has never bitten or hurt anyone. He also said that he only attacked him because he had been shot by tranquilizer darts, and he did not want to be captured. Agent Shaw then said, "You were deer hunting? Heck, that's no problem at all, Mr. Knight." Agent Norman backed him by saying, "Not a problem at all." Colt looks at Agent Norman saying, "You're not human, are you? Because you don't smell like one." Agent Shaw smiled saying, "Agent Norman is an alien from another planet. Don't worry about his hard exterior. He's just a big old teddy bear once you get to know him." Agent Norman calmly said, "Grizzly bear." Agent Shaw continues, "Now that we're all amigos, here's the bad news. Apparently, somebody knows who and what you are, and they are definitely trying to capture you. And my guess is they won't stop. We are very aware of who you are, Mr. Knight, and that you are not dangerous. But if you want to keep that beautiful woman and her daughter safe, you need to leave." Colt slowly shakes his head, looking over at Candice standing in the barn doorway, then looks back at Agent Shaw saying, "This is the first time in a long time I've been happy." Agent Shaw emphasizes with him, telling Colt that his job and love don't mix, so he can relate. He then recommended to Colt, tell her that he was a witness to a mafia murder, so it's not safe for him to stay here any longer. Colt disappointedly agrees. Agent Shaw tells Colt that they will be close by and keeping an eye out, just in case those men show back up again. The two agents drive off Candice's property, and as soon as they are out of sight, Agent Norman activates the car's cloaking. Now, with their vehicle invisible, they drove back onto the property close to the house and waited. Later that night, Colt and Candice sat in front of Colt's camper with the campfire going. Candice spoke saying, "You've been quiet about those FBI agents and what they wanted. I want to know what's going on. I want to know if I've made a mistake by letting you stay here." Colt tells her, "I know we just met, but you are something special, Candice, and I don't want you to be in any danger." Candice nervously asked, "So, what is it, Colt?" Colt explained himself saying, "I have people looking for me, people in the mafia, because I witnessed a homicide. That's why the FBI came looking for me today. So, I have to leave." Candice becomes angry. "I don't believe this. All this work needs to be done, and you're leaving? How am I supposed to do all this by myself? I thought I could rely on you." Colt tells her, "I don't want to leave. I have to leave." Candice tells him not to lie. He wants to leave because he's too lazy to do the work. Colt assures her that once this situation is dealt with, he will come back. Candice said, "I'll figure it out on my own." As Candice walks away, turning her back to Colt, she begins to cry. Colt stands up, yelling out, "I'm not coming back for the work, Candice. I'm coming back for you." Colt watches Candice walk into the house with a broken heart. Without warning, Colt feels something sharp in his back. Then he falls face first into the ground. The 4 mercenaries surround Colt as he lays on the ground, unable to move. One of them joyfully said, "The elephant tranquilizers did the trick." Human said to Hayfield, "Easy money." Hayfield said, "Carrie, Harris, grab him before his girlfriend comes back." Carrie grabs his wrists and Harris grabs his ankles, and then they begin to walk away with him. Agent Shaw seemingly pops out of thin air, startling the mercenary, saying, "What are you all doing with my friend Mr. Knight?" Hayfield raised his weapon, pointing it at Agent Shaw, saying, "Who are you?" Agent Shaw replies, "Well, I'm Agent Shaw, and that is Agent Norman, and we're with the FBI. Now, where are you going with Mr. Knight?" Human raised his rifle, saying, 150 grand, boys." Agent Shaw then tells them, "I'm going to recommend you lower that weapon. Agent Norman here, he isn't as friendly as I am." Human opens fire on Agent Norman, and Agent Norman rushes over to him with a powerful right-hand punch that sends him flying off into the darkness. Hayfield takes off running quickly, followed by Harris. Carrie lets out a monstrous yell, transforming into a werewolf. Carrie takes aim and opens fire on Agent Norman. Agent Norman extends his right arm, and a protective field appears, deflecting all the bullets. Carrie, now filled with rage, sprints towards Agent Norman, leaps into the air, and drop kicks him in the chest. Agent Norman absorbs the blow, then punches him as he lands, knocking him backwards. Quickly moving forward, Agent Norman throws a left hook, missing Carrie as he ducks under it, and quickly counters Agent Norman with a leg sweep. Agent Norman hits the ground hard, landing on his back. Carrie leaps at him and runs into a strong right-hand punch as Agent Norman rolls over. As Carrie and Agent Norman fight, Agent Shaw calmly says, "You keep having your fun, Agent Norman. I'll go apprehend the other 2. Then, within the blink of an eye, Agent Shaw goes from relaxing and enjoying a fight to running at 50 miles per hour. Agent Shaw approaches Hayfield from behind and throws a shoulder in his back, lifting him up off the ground, then falling flat on his stomach. Agent Shaw throws a small device at Hayfield that quickly wraps around his body with metal wire. Continuing to run at 50 miles an hour, he spots Harris, and he circles around in front of him. Charging at Harris and lowering his stance, Agent Shaw hits him with the shoulder to his abdomen, knocking him up off his feet and into the air. Harris hits the ground hard on his back as Agent Shaw throws a small device on him as well, quickly wrapping him with wire. Back near the camper, Agent Norman chases Carrie and loses sight of him in the darkness and the tall grass. Alice, his AI, told Agent Norman that they already apprehended 3 men for interrogation, so pursuing the werewolf was unnecessary.
All events and details of this investigation has been classified as top secret and have been redacted.
The next morning, inside the basement of an old vacant house sitting on 20 acres of land, Agent Shaw and Norman tied up the 3 mercenaries to chairs. Agent Shaw began to question the men. He asked them, "Who's your employer?" Hayfield responded, "Screw you." Agent Shaw looks over to Hayfield, saying, "I shouldn't have to remind you that we are federal agents." Hayfield smirks as he said, "You're not feds. Feds don't have that kind of tech." Agent Shaw replied, "You know what? You're absolutely correct, Mr." Hayfield quickly responded, saying, "Up yours." Agent Shaw smiled, saying, "Well, Mr. Up yours, we are not with the FBI. No. We officially don't exist. We're the guys that show up when things that are not supposed to exist go bump in the night. And once our job is done, we don't exist either. Mr. Up Yours, now, who do you work for, and why are they sending you after Mr. Knight? All of the mercenaries remain silent and stone-faced. Agent Norman walks over to Harris standing in front of him. Harris looks him in the eyes, saying, "Am I supposed to be afraid?" Then Agent Norman quickly grabs one of the chair legs and slings Harris up off the ground and to the wall. Harris hits the wall so hard that his chair breaks apart and he's knocked out cold before he hits the ground. Agent Norman walks over to Human next. Human yells out, "I'm not telling you nothing." Agent Norman balls up his fist and smashes his right femur bone. A loud cracking sound echoes off the brick walls of the basement as Human screams out in pain. Agent Norman turns his head towards Hayfield with a fierce look in his eyes. Hayfield nervously says, "His name is Waynesfield. He lives in New York. I'll give you his address. Just stop." Agent Shaw calmly said, "I knew you'd come around, and I thank you, Mr. Up Yours." Agent Shaw then holds his hand out with a small robotic mosquito looking at Hayfield saying, "This here is going to take away all your bad memories of me and Agent Norman. Because like I said, once our job is done, we no longer exist." Agent Shaw, Norman, and Colt stand outside in the yard of the house the agents had just been interrogating the mercenaries in. Agent Shaw tells Colt the man trying to capture him was named Chip Wainsworth, an eccentric billionaire who wants to add him to his art collection. Colt insists on going with them to capture Wainsworth. Agent Shaw looks at Agent Norman as Agent Norman says, "It is going against protocol, but it would not be the first time we have." Then Agent Shaw said, "Agent Norman says he'd love you to be a part of our little posse. And so would I." The three men arrive at Wainsworth's mansion at night. Agent Norman releases a robotic mosquito out of his window. Colt asks what he was doing, and Agent Shaw explained, telling him that the robotic mosquito is equipped with a camera and will quickly fly around the property to locate Wainsworth. Also, it will let them know what type of security he has. As the robotic mosquito flies throughout the mansion, it sends video feed of more than a dozen armed guards wearing suits. The guards are mostly standing around in casual conversation. After more than 20 minutes of searching the enormous home, Wainsworth was located in a room talking with Carrie, the only mercenary that escaped Candice's farm. Back in the car, both of the agents and Colt watched the footage. Agent Shaw says Wainsworth must be expecting us, so let's go through the front door. Once he's alerted to our presence, he'll go hide inside his panic room. So I'm setting our mosquito to tag along with him so we know right where he is. Agent Norman recommends giving Colt a temporary protective shield, and Agent Shaw agrees that it would be a great idea. Agent Shaw tells Colt, "Me and Agent Norman have protective tech made into our suits, giving us a type of force field." Agent Shaw hands Colt a small metal ball the size of a marble and continues, "I doubt they have any silver bullets, but I'm sure you're not a fan of being shot. So this will give you a protective field until it runs out of juice. Just put it in your pocket." Colt told him that he has to remove all of his clothes before changing into a werewolf. Agent Norman then said it also works as a suppository. Colt looks surprised as Agent Shaw chuckles and says, "Just swallow it after you change." Agents Norman and Shaw, followed by Colt in his werewolf form, walk towards the Wainsworth mansion's front door. After reaching the front door, Agent Norman balls up his fist, then with a single blow breaks the locks on the 12-foot tall mansion door, making them fly open. Inside the mansion, the guards draw their weapons, pointing them towards the long hallway leading to the front door. Both agents calmly walk down the long hallway into the mansion lobby. standing with their large military rifles not aimed at any guards. The agents stood silent. One of the guards radioed Wainsworth, letting him know that 2 armed men just broke into his house. Back inside the room with Carrie and some armed guards, Carrie told Wainsworth that has to be them. Wainsworth tells Carrie and the guards to go stop them as he runs off to his panic room, and the robotic mosquito follows Wainsworth as he runs throughout the house. As Carrie entered the lobby, he yells for the guards to open fire and kill them. As every guard fired their pistols, the bullets just bounced off the agents. A loud howl is heard coming from outside of the mansion front door. Then, rushing into the house is Colt, standing over 8 foot tall as a werewolf. All gunfire is concentrated onto Colt, but with his temporary force field, he is unharmed. Both agents take off running in opposite directions. Agent Shaw jumps high into the air, shooting a guard on the 2nd floor. Agent Norman fires a ring-shaped round at 2 guards as they rapidly fire at him. The energy rings fired from Agent Norman's weapon quickly wrap around the wrists of the guards who are holding their weapons with both hands. As the energy rings quickly tighten down on their wrists, it lifts their arms above their heads, forcing them to aim at the ceiling. Then, quickly they begin to levitate to the ceiling, kicking their legs and yelling at Agent Norman as he runs underneath them. Colt rushes at Carrie as he fires his gun. Colt knocks him down into a wall, and Carrie bounces off the wall, hitting the ground hard. Springing back to his feet, Carrie takes aim and begins to shoot Colt again, moving quickly as he circles him. Now, beginning to feel the bullets as his force field weakens, Colt holds his hands up, protecting himself. Carrie runs out of bullets, so he takes off running away from Colt and throws his gun at him. Agent Shaw, on the 2nd floor, blasts guards with his gun that creates a large spark that shocks the men until they pass out. Colt chases Carrie down a long hallway. Carrie turns quickly into an indoor pool room. Colt follows behind him, but as soon as Colt steps into the room, Carrie jumps out, biting down onto the front of his neck. Colt, being much larger than Carrie, grabs his lower jaw, pulling him off. Holding Carrie up by his neck, Colt slams him down onto the ground, causing him to roll into the pool. Colt jumps into the pool, pulling the weakened, smaller werewolf out of the water by his jacket. Colt lets out a loud howl before biting his head off, then spitting it out into the pool. Carrie's human head floated in the pool with a look of surprise. Agent Shaw, Norman, with Colt, stood outside of Wainsworth's panic room. Wainsworth's voice comes from a speaker made into the wall saying, "I have a lot more men on their way and you will not get to me before they arrive." Agent Shaw smiles as he said, "Alice?" His AI replied saying, "Yes, Agent Shaw." Agent Shaw then said, "I need an override on this panic room door." Alice said, "Sure thing, Agent Shaw." And the door opened. The door opens, revealing Mr. Wainsworth standing alone and frightened. Wainsworth turns his attention to Colt saying, You're beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. A true work of art." Agent Norman enters the room, grabbing Wainsworth by his arm and pulls him along as Agent Norman walks out of the panic room. As Wainsworth walks behind Agent Norman without resistance, he stares at Colt in amazement, saying, "I would have treated you very well. I would have given you anything that you desired." Agent Shaw then says, "Yeah, well, now you're getting locked up." The following day, in the morning, the agents dropped Colt back off at Candice's farm. They stood by their car as Colt and Candice embraced in a kiss. Then Debbie hugged Colt. Watching them reunite, Agent Shaw said, "Now that's what I call a happy ending, Agent Norman." Agent Norman replies saying, "Indeed, Agent Shaw, indeed."